You know, the legendary psychologist Carl Jung, one of the founders of analytical psychology, he documented this pattern in his patients that was, well, it was both disturbing and incredibly powerful. He saw these people, what we'd probably call empaths today, who on the surface seem so gentle, so broken, until one day, something inside them just snapped. But this isn't just a story about a breakdown. Oh no, it's the story of one of the most profound transformations a human being can possibly go through.
So the source material kicks off with this quote, and man, it just immediately shatters that old stereotype of the weak, overly sensitive empath, doesn't it? It completely reframes kindness. It's not a vulnerability, it's untapped power. And that really sets the stage for the radical transformation we're about to dive into.
And that brings us to the empath's secret weapon. See, back in his clinic in Zurich, Jung's files were just full of these patients who seemed absolutely destroyed by life. But he pretty quickly realized that underneath all that surface-level pain, they were secretly doing something incredible.
What Jung saw was this stunning pattern. Patient after patient came in with the exact same wounds. They were the emotional shock absorbers for their entire family, for their relationships. They took on a parent's rage, a partner's betrayal, and they always blamed themselves. The world had just taught them over and over that their sensitivity was a flaw.
This question right here, this was the turning point in Jung's whole understanding. He started to suspect that this was more than just suffering. What if this constant absorption of pain wasn't actually a burden? What if it was a form of training?
And here it is, the reveal that Jung said made his blood run cold. When he asked these patients to describe their relationships, he wasn't getting the scattered, confused thoughts of a damaged mind. No. He got surgically precise maps of emotional patterns. These empaths weren't broken. They were psychological geniuses in hiding, cataloging every single trigger, every insecurity, and every fear of the people who were hurting them.
So Jung, being a scientist, had to test this, right? He started bringing in colleagues, even strangers, into his office. He'd ask his empath patients to just observe them for a few minutes. And within that time, they could identify childhood traumas, hidden relationship dynamics, professional insecurities, with an accuracy rate that was consistently over 95%. That's just... Now let's be super clear here. This wasn't some kind of psychic ability or magic. It was something way more real, and honestly, way more impressive. Their brains were just wired for emotional pattern recognition on a level most of us can't even imagine. What we call intuition, they were experiencing as raw data processing. They saw the lies, they saw the hidden agendas, but they had been taught their whole lives to silence what they knew was true.
Okay, so you've got all this stored data, all this hidden power just sitting there. But it needs a catalyst, right? A trigger to finally unleash it. And what Jung found was that the trigger for this breaking point, for the snap, was always the exact same thing.
This change doesn't just happen over time. It's an explosion. And the fuse is always lit by a profound betrayal from someone the empath trusted completely. A spouse, a parent, a best friend. The very person they absorbed the most painful.
Jung documented this moment, and the source calls it the clarity event. And it's not just about finding out about the betrayal itself. The truly devastating part, the thing that breaks them open, is the sudden, crystal-clear realization that they saw all the signs. All the data points were there, all along, and they chose to ignore them.
So you'd expect chaos, right? Screams, tears, a total meltdown, and their abusers certainly expect it. But what Jung saw was something so much more chilling. The empath becomes unnaturally calm. They don't attack, they don't rage, they simply begin to speak. And out comes every single truth they have observed and silently cataloged for years, with clinical precision.
And this is when Jung realized that the snap wasn't a nervous breakdown at all. It was a profound psychological breakthrough. It was a process he famously called integrating the shadow.
So what is this shadow? It's not some evil monster lurking inside, not at all. For the empath, their shadow was their suppressed intelligence, their silenced intuition, their denied strength. For years, they were told these parts of them were too much or too sensitive. Integration is that moment they finally stop apologizing for their own perception and start claiming it as their greatest strength. And Jung saw this happen in 3 consistent stages. First up is recognition. They finally start trusting what they see as valid data. They stop second-guessing themselves. Second is integration. This is where they merge that deep kindness with a newfound, almost ruthless precision. And finally, application. They learn to use their empathy strategically, like a tool, not just absorb everything like a sponge.
So what does life even look like after this awakening?
Well, what Jung found both disturbing and fascinating was that this transformation, it's permanent. There's absolutely no going back. I mean, this shift is just total. They go from unconsciously absorbing everything around them to making a conscious choice about whose energy they'll engage with. That old people-pleasing habit, it becomes strategic boundaries. They evolve from being so easily manipulated to becoming, as Jung himself noted, psychologically untouchable.
Jung also noticed something he called the predator's instinct. Manipulative people, the very ones who used to walk all over them, they suddenly get nervous in their presence. They can't explain why, but they can feel, on a primal level, that their old games just won't work anymore.
And here's the wild part. The awakened empath doesn't even have to confront anyone. Their presence alone starts to act like a mirror, reflecting people's true nature right back at them. Healthy people, they're inspired by it. But toxic people either have to change or they expose themselves trying to drag the empath back into the old dysfunctional dance.
Ultimately, Jung came to see this whole process as a conscious choice. He believed every empath eventually faces this fork in the road. It's like an inevitable evolutionary step that forces a decision. Are you going to remain a victim, or are you going to become sovereign over your own life?
In his private notes, Jung described this final state as something both beautiful and terrible. The empath becomes a manipulator's ultimate fear, someone who can read them like a book but no longer needs their approval, their validation, or anything else from them. They become truly, completely free.
This quote from Jung it sums up the entire journey perfectly. The pain doesn't come from feeling too much. The real tragedy, he believed, was the decades these powerful people spent doubting their own gifts, apologizing for their own perception, and waiting, just waiting, to finally honor the incredible psychological instrument they were born with.
And that leaves us with this final question. According to Jung's work, this transformation, it's inevitable. The snap will happen. So the only real question is whether it's going to be a conscious, directed integration or just a destructive, chaotic explosion. Will you direct that power, or will it direct you?